My name is Maylin. I'm 42 and never imagined I'd be sitting in a police interrogation room watching my sister Hannah lie brazenly about a hit and run that left 3 people dead. "Look, Detective Sato," Hannah said, waving a hand dismissively toward me. "My sister May here. She's not exactly trustworthy when it comes to details." Hannah leaned back, her voice dripping with false concern. "She's been struggling since she lost her job a while back. Drinking a bit too much, you know how it goes. I sat still in the cold metal chair, watching Hannah play her part. She'd always been the family's pride and joy, successful tech entrepreneur, sleek condo downtown, married to a surgeon, the kind of daughter my parents boasted about at every reunion while sidestepping any mention of my work. Detective Sato glanced between us. "Miss Lynn, you reported the tip about your sister's involvement in the hit and run on Route 12 last Thursday evening?" I nodded. Hannah let out a forced chuckle, but it sounded brittle. May's been having a tough go lately. "Lost her city job. Can't seem to land anything stable. I think she's been binge-watching too many true crime shows, Detective, mixing up reality with her imagination." The irony was sharp. For 15 years, I'd lived in a world of high-stakes decisions where a single misstep could mean life or death, success or catastrophe. But to Hannah, I was just her jobless sister, lost in a haze of TV plots. "City job," Detective Sato said, jotting a note. "What kind of work was that?" Before I could speak, Hannah jumped in. "Some low-level desk gig, sorting mail, answering calls, nothing special. She got cut during budget reductions, which says something about her, doesn't it?" For 15 years, I'd been with the agency, but to my family, I was just May, working some vague job in the city, tight-lipped about the specifics. When operational security forced me to say I'd lost my job, they assumed it was due to incompetence, not because I'd been reassigned to a covert program requiring a complete civilian facade. "May," Hannah went on, her voice thick with fake sympathy, "I know you're upset about the job thing, but making up stories about family won't fix anything. Maybe you should talk to someone professional instead of dragging the police into your fantasies." Detective Sato studied me. "Miss Lynn, why do you believe your sister was involved in this incident?" "I saw her car the morning after," I said. "Front bumper damage, fresh scrapes along the passenger side, consistent with clipping a motorcycle. Paint transfer that looked like metal contact." Hannah's expression flickered briefly. "She thinks she saw my car," she corrected too quickly. "But like I said, her judgment's cloudy these days. Drinking too much. And May's always been a bit theatrical. Even as kids, she'd spin wild stories for attention. That stung more than I expected. As a kid, I'd loved reading espionage novels, dreaming of covert missions. The difference was I'd lived those missions for over a decade while Hannah built her tech empire and juggled secret affairs. "Detective," Hannah said, settling back with polished confidence, "I hate to say this about my own sister, but you need to know who you're dealing with. May's always been the troubled one. Dropped out of college, hopped from job to job, never married, no kids. She's 42 and has little to show for it except a trail of dead ends." The familiar ache tightened in my chest, the same one I'd felt at family dinners where Hannah dazzled everyone with tales of her latest startup triumph, while I stayed silent, unable to discuss my real work. Every Lunar New Year when my mom would ask why I couldn't find a steady job like Hannah's. Every wedding where relatives murmured about poor May, still adrift. "Where were you Thursday night between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m.? Detective Sato asked Hannah. "At home with my husband," she replied smoothly. "We streamed a movie, turned in early. Ken can vouch for me." She paused, as if recalling. "That new series about corporate espionage, you know the one." I knew Ken would back her up. He'd been covering for Hannah's lies for years, her late nights at the office, her weekend conferences that were actually getaways with her lover from the startup scene, her gambling sprees that drained their joint account. Ken was well practiced at upholding her perfect image, mostly to avoid facing the cracks in their marriage. "May," Hannah said, turning to me with staged pity, "I know losing your job at your age is rough, but accusing family of crimes won't make you feel better about your life." "My life?" I said quietly. Well, you're 42, no real career, no spouse, no kids, scraping by when you were working. It must be hard watching everyone else thrive while you're still figuring things out. Detective Sato scribbled notes, his eyes tracking our exchange closely. Miss Lynn, do you have any evidence beyond the damage you saw on the vehicle? Before I could respond, Hana cut in. Detective, May's always been envious of family members who've made something of themselves. She's never gotten over my success while she's been stuck in dead-end jobs. A memory hit me hard. Last New Year's dinner at my parents' house, Hana holding court about her latest app launch while I sat quietly. She turned to me smiling and said, May, you've been so quiet. How's the job search going? Still looking for something that fits your talents? The table had chuckled, thinking it was lighthearted, not realizing it underscored my supposed failures. I haven't been unemployed, I said softly. May, losing a city desk job after, 5 years? That's not exactly stability, Hana shot back. 15 years, I corrected. Hana blinked but recovered fast. 15 years pushing papers and they still let you go? That's even worse, isn't it, Detective? Detective Sato turned to me. 15 years is a long time. What exactly did you do for the city? Hana laughed before I could answer. Go ahead, May. Tell him about your big city job. I bet the detective's dying to hear about your groundbreaking filing techniques. I stared at Hana's smug expression, remembering all the times she'd tossed out those little jabs. The family party where she introduced me to her investors as my sister May, she works in some city office, basic stuff. At the cousin's wedding reception, Hana had told the groom's parents I shuffled papers for city bureaucrats while she built real wealth in the tech world. I worked in intelligence, I said. Intelligence? Hana echoed, her tone mocking. Right. Like I said, Detective, she's lost in a fantasy world. May probably thinks she's some kind of covert operative. I am. The room fell silent, save for the faint buzz of the precinct's overhead lights and the muffled chatter from the bullpen beyond the door. Detective Sato set his pen down deliberately. You're what? I'm an intelligence officer with the agency. Hana's smirk wavered, but she tried to hold her ground. May, come on. This isn't helping your story. Detective, she's clearly having some kind of breakdown clandestine service, 15 years, currently between assignments. Detective Sato fixed his gaze on me, assessing like he was piecing together a cipher. Can you prove that? I reached into my bag and pulled out my credentials, not one of the cover IDs I'd used on Ops. Mia Chen, freelance graphic designer, Lena Park, NGO coordinator, Sarah Kim, research assistant, but my real identification. Detective Sato examined the card, his expression shifting entirely. His posture straightened. Miss. Lynn, I need to step out to make a few calls. After he left, Hana stared at the credentials on the table. That's not real, right? Some kind of prank? Did you get that off the internet? It's real. But you worked in some dull city office, filing forms. You told us you couldn't talk about it because it was boring admin stuff or something. I told you I worked for the government and couldn't discuss details. You assumed it was filing. Hana's face cycled through emotions, confusion, disbelief, then a flicker of panic. You're saying you actually work for the agency? Like the agency? I work for the agency, but you always saw me as broke. Living in that cramped apartment in Oakland, driving a 12-year-old Toyota, shopping at thrift stores instead of boutiques. Cover identity means living modestly, I said. Can't exactly roll up to a meet with cartel informants in Mexico in a Tesla. Cartel informants? Mexico? Hana's voice cracked. Among other places, Syria, Thailand, Ukraine, wherever the job takes me. Hana went quiet, processing. All those times you vanished for months and when you missed Mom's birthday 3 years ago and Lunar New Year last year, I was working. And when you couldn't make my company's launch party because of a last-minute work trip, I was working. God, May. Hana ran her fingers through her hair. Why didn't you ever say anything? Why let us think you were, a loser? A nobody who couldn't keep a job? When would I have said something, Hana? During the family dinners where you went on about your latest app deal for an hour? When you told everyone I needed to take notes from your success? When you introduced me to your investors as my sister May? She does some city desk job, nothing big. I didn't know what you did. You never told us. You didn't ask. It was easier to think I was a failure than to imagine there might be more to it. Detective Sato returned with a man in a sharp suit. Miss? Lynn, this is Agent Tanaka from the FBI. He's here to verify your credentials and handle any jurisdictional matters. Agent Tanaka studied my ID, then met my eyes with the quiet acknowledgement of one operative to another. Officer Lynn, I'll need to contact Langley to confirm, but your credentials look legitimate. They are. Hana's gaze darted between us like she was watching a game she didn't understand. Wait, jurisdictional matters? What's that mean? Agent Tanaka ignored her. Officer Lynn, how long have you been back stateside? 8 weeks. Debriefing after a 24-month assignment. 24 months? Hana's voice was faint. You thought I was jobless for 2 years, I said. You and Mom thought I was too depressed to talk about it. I was in Central Asia disrupting a smuggling ring. The words landed heavily. Hana looked like she'd been slapped. 30 minutes later, Agent Tanaka returned from his calls and murmured something to Detective Sato, who nodded, his demeanor now markedly different. Miss, Lynn, your credentials are verified. You're cleared to assist in this investigation at the federal level if needed. He turned to Hana. Miss, Lynn, I need to ask you follow-up questions about your whereabouts Thursday night. You should know you're now being questioned in the presence of a federal intelligence officer whose testimony carries significant weight. Hana's face paled like she might be sick. Wait, you're believing her now just because of some ID? Detective Sato's tone was crisp, professional. Miss, Lynn is a federal intelligence officer with 15 years of service and top-tier clearance. Her observational skills, attention to detail, and credibility are well established, but she's just May. The sister, who can't get her act together, she's Officer Lynn, Detective Sato said. And she's provided detailed forensic observations about your vehicle's damage that align with our evidence from the crash site. I watched Hana's confidence unravel. The paint transfer you described, Detective Sato continued, matches samples from the victim's motorcycle. The scrape patterns you noted fit the impact trajectory our reconstruction team calculated. Hana turned to me, desperate. May, you can't be serious. We're family. You can't ruin my life over an accident. An accident you fled, I said. 3 people died, Hana. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. You knew what to do. You chose not to. May, please, think about Ken. Think about my kids. This will destroy everything. You should have thought of that before you hit 3 motorcyclists and drove off. Detective Sato cleared his throat. Miss, Lynn, we have paint samples from your vehicle matching the victim's bike. We have tire tracks from the scene. We have witness accounts placing a vehicle like yours at the time of the incident. And now we have detailed testimony from a trained federal intelligence officer who observed your vehicle's condition the morning after. This is unreal, Hana whispered. Agent Tanaka spoke up. Miss Lynn, I should also inform you that falsely accusing a federal officer of alcoholism and mental instability to discredit her testimony is a federal offense. I didn't know she was... Hana trailed off. I thought she was... Thought she was what? Detective Sato asked. I thought she was nobody important. The words slipped from Hana's lips before she could stop them, raw and cutting. I stood slowly. Detective, I've given my statement and contact details. Agent Tanaka has my clearance information for any follow-up. If you need me, you know how to reach me through official channels. As I moved toward the door, Hana's voice broke through. May, wait. We need to talk. This is family business. I turned to face her. No, Hana, we don't. Family doesn't try to ruin each other's credibility to cover up vehicular manslaughter. Her face collapsed entirely. I didn't mean for this to happen. It was an accident. I was driving back from a client dinner. I'd had a few drinks. The road was dark. But lying about it wasn't an accident, I said. Fleeing wasn't an accident. And trying to paint me as unstable to save yourself definitely wasn't an accident. I was terrified, 3 people are dead, Hannah. A mother, a teacher, and a teenager. They had families too. I left her in the interrogation room, grappling with the realization that her nobody sister held more authority and credibility than she could have ever fathomed. 3 days later, Hannah was arrested, charged with 3 counts of vehicular manslaughter, leaving the scene of a fatal crash, and obstruction of justice. Local headlines buzzed with the story. A prominent tech CEO, a community darling, undone by evidence from her own sister. My name and profession stayed out of the reports, but the family knew. The news spread through our extended relatives like a storm. My aunt, who'd spent years lamenting my lack of ambition to her friends, called to mumble an awkward apology. My uncle, who'd lectured me at every gathering about needing a real career, left a voicemail wanting to clear up some confusion. That night, my mother called, her voice hesitant, uncertain. "Maylene," she said, using my full name instead of the usual May. "Your aunt told me about Hannah. She said you're some kind of federal agent?" "Something like that," I said, "for 15 years, Mom." A long pause. I could hear her breathing, piecing it together. 15 years, and you never told us. I told you I worked for the government in a sensitive role. I said I couldn't share details. I mentioned the travel, the irregular hours, but we all thought you were struggling, that you needed help to get your life together. You thought I was nobody important. You decided I was failing without asking what my life really was. Another silence. May, you seem so ordinary, like you were lost. That's the point of my job, Mom. To seem unremarkable while doing extraordinary things. To blend in, to be underestimated. She was quiet for a long time. Are you good at it? Your work? I thought of the classified commendations in my file, the operations that had saved lives, the intelligence that had thwarted threats, the networks I'd dismantled, the years of service that kept my country safer while my family fretted over my unstable career. Yes, Mom, I'm very good at it. I don't understand why you couldn't tell us. We're your family. When I said my work was sensitive and I couldn't discuss it, you assumed it was unimportant. You decided secrecy meant insignificance. The truth was, their judgment had weighed on me more than I'd admitted. For 15 years, I'd carried their disappointment like a quiet ache, wondering if they were right about me being aimless, incapable of success or stability, but their assumptions were rooted in ignorance of my actual life. They judged me against metrics that didn't apply, criticized me for failing at goals I'd never pursued. I hadn't failed. I'd excelled at things they couldn't even imagine. Hannah's arrest wasn't the most satisfying part, though it brought justice for the families she'd shattered with her reckless driving and cowardice. The real satisfaction came from watching their narrative about me collapse under the weight of the truth. For 15 years, I'd been the family let down, the sister who couldn't find her footing, who paled next to Hannah's shining example of success. Now Hannah faced up to 30 years in prison, and I was a decorated federal officer whose testimony had brought her down. There's something profound in realizing the people whose approval you've chased don't know you well enough to judge you. Their disappointment stemmed from their own assumptions about what success should look like, not my actual performance. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had my superiors' trust, my government's confidence, and my own certainty in what I'd achieved for something greater than myself. That was enough. But there was a deep satisfaction in watching Hannah's world fracture as she realized her nobody sister wielded more power and authority than she'd ever dreamed. There was justice in seeing my family's assumptions shatter against the reality of my service. And there was a quiet peace in finally understanding that their judgment said everything about their limitations and nothing about mine. I'd spent years feeling guilty for not meeting their expectations, for missing family events, for not having a life they could comprehend or applaud. Now I saw their expectations were irrelevant. I'd been living up to far higher standards, ones they couldn't even perceive, let alone meet. Hannah had built her superiority on the belief that I was nobody important. Learning. I was someone with the authority to upend her life with one call. Didn't just break her defense. It shattered her entire understanding of who held real power in our family, and that could never be undone.